Welcome to Nicktoons Racing!
It's Cat Dog by a Whisker!
With the Rugrats babies!
Are making those beavers awful angry!
But Spongebob's making his move and oh, he's soaking up sidewalks!
With the new Nicktoons Racing game!
You can race all your favorite Nicktoons characters!
Go head to head!
Or team up relay style!
With 5 wild ways to race!
You'll laugh all the way to the finish line!
Nicktoons Racing!
For PC CD-ROM Windows 95 and 98.
Rated E!
For everyone! We put the car in cartoon!
What? Nicktoons, they began in the 90s, and of course because they originate from the 90s, that means they are unquestionably the greatest things ever. Because as we all know, it's the best decade according to the same demographic who refuse to grow up and will whine if anything is changed ever so slightly. Being said, I cannot deny the fact that these things certainly changed up animation for the better, since back in the 80s the animation industry had to sell based on subpar merchandise solely. But these guys got to create their own Stimpys and their Spongebobs, since according to Vanessa Coffey and Geraldine Layburn, they wanted these Nicktoons to be creator driven and based on original characters and not street sharks? Rugrats, Dog, Ren and Stimpy, and a bunch of other shows not only paved the way for more ambitious and creative shows later down the road, but also helped influence the creators of other shows who grew up with the passion these people expressed in their interesting endeavours. So, naturally, when you have such a huge and colourful catalogue of characters, it makes sense you want to include them in a big crossover event, and what better way than with video games? Nickelodeon were farting these games onto store shelves with the intention of seeing what will get the kids to force their parents to bankruptcy. Like, hey kids, do you want to become a beach bandit? Or break the rules? Or are you taking the piss? However, one of the first and most painful was a game simply entitled Nicktoons Racing, released in 2000 and produced by Hasbro Interactive. This game received, wonderful. The surface, I shouldn't have been remotely surprised out of all ideas they went with a Mario Kart clone. I mean, the game itself is simple, clean, fun, and has lasted the last 30 odd years delighting audiences with its universal pick up and play appeal. So why not copy it for this game? Believe it or not, this game does have a story. You see, various Nicktoons have been invited to take part in a racing tournament by a mysterious host, whose identity is not revealed to us, but rather goes under an identity known only as Mystery Rider, a racer who everyone is going to have to try and beat, as well as beating each other. Because the award for winning the tournament is the Krusty Krab Big Bun Award, and a year's supply of Krabby Patties. Yep. When you get to the menus, you realise you might have regretted turning on this game. I don't think this menu is loud and annoying. By the way, did you know that the word chocolate is a bit? The main game is, as you might have guessed, to race across 3 different cups with 4 races and come first overall in the proceeding. There are 12 different characters to select from. Well, 13. Don't worry, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So, based on first impressions, visually speaking, the game actually looks pretty nice. The environments each of the tracks depict from their respective shows look stellar visually and have little bits of attention to detail that make each track not feel too similar to, say, another track from the same show, but also for fans who perhaps love these shows and like the little nods to the shows they love. Even the colours they use for different assets are very memorable and make the tracks look really cool to explore. The character models used in this game also don't look too bad for the most part and are quite expressive and animated. Most of them at least. Why do the angry beavers look like a conjoined fetus? In all honesty, presentation is this game's strongest suit, and like I said, the fact that this game still looks great 20 years later is actually very impressive. The roster is actually pretty diverse, covering some obvious shows from the time and some obscure stuff like Real Monsters, which is actually a really interesting and creative show. Though I must ask, you feature Stimpy, but not Ren? That's like watching an episode of Beavis and Butthead, but only Butthead is present in the whole episode. Most he gets is a cameo, but really, you aren't going to feature the other half of the title show?
Disgusting!
In cup races, you race for 3 different cups with 4 races in each, and as I already mentioned, of course, the higher you finish, the more points you receive in the overall standing. Standard stuff, almost like every other racing game. Though Nicktoons Racing does at least have its own unique set of mechanics. You see, throughout races you can collect these shiny little ball diamond things. I'm not entirely sure what they're supposed to be. Because of what's called your boost meter, and by hitting the boost button it launches your car forward with great speed. Boosting is very handy to have, and not only that, but boosting is very important to the game, since without it you'll most likely get last place each time. There is a problem with boosting. You see, you can't hold on to the boost for very long as it evaporates over time, meaning you can't be strategic and wait to use it for when you're on a safe route so you can just speed along. There are also presents scattered around the track, and this is where you'll get your weapons during racing. Nothing here you probably haven't seen in other games, but we'll go over them regardless. Our coconuts, which you launch at racers in front of you, you don't get to shoot them one at a time, but rather blast them all at once, which is a bit irritating, but whatever. Then we have powdered toast, which fires these cube things in front of you. Trouble is, there's no real way to alter your trajectory in any way. It just goes, and you gotta pray someone in front of you gets hit. We also have bubbles, not those bubbles, and they can trap an opponent and allow you to overtake them. There are also the jellyfish from Spongebob, who targets one opponent and stuns them in place for about 5 seconds. This is one of the more practical weapons, since it's really nasty if it's used against you as it is the opponent. Not to mention, it's pretty common, so more often than not, it's the one that will pop up the most frequently. Baby powder. It slows down the racer and is kinda lame. And that's it. Sound effect is funny though. Kinda just a dude getting the wind knocked out of him. Same with the trash can. Fitting name, really.
The trash man. Come out, I throw trash all over the ring, and then I start eating garbage.
Then there is the Flash. I have no clue how it's meant to be used, but I nearly never got it to work. I have no real comment for it. Shield? Amazing. No complaints. I want more of this. Kitty litter? Hate it. Not necessarily when you use it yourself, but rather if you fall prey to it because of a serious problem with how it's been programmed. Normally, there is a sound prompt for when a weapon has hit you. But on my version of the game, not only does no sound play, but it reacts about 3 seconds after I ran into it. So, more often than not, I have zero idea if I've even hit it, since the game makes zero immediate acknowledgement I hit it at all. In short, they're horrible and sucks whenever you run into them. Like, all the goddamn time. This staff weapon, which is a bit like the Boo from Mario Kart, since it steals a weapon from another person. Time machine warp panel thing, which teleports a racer higher up in the race, which can be extra helpful because falling behind in this game sucks. More on this shortly. Oh yeah, the green slimy poop thing is really helpful too, but I have no clue what show it even comes from. It stalls a car for a few seconds. I call it poopy because, well, that's sound effect. Finally, we have Stump. Yeah, Stump. You know Stump? He's the best weapon in the game. He's basically this game's blue shell, but better. Since not only does this weapon hit everyone, ahead of you, but unless you have a shield, he's basically unstoppable. Is it absolutely terrible when you get blasted by him? Yes, of course. But the sheer power this thing carries means you are praying you are getting this overpowered, unbalanced monster in clutches each time. So yeah, weapons are kinda messed, and if you get hit by one on average, you're stunned for 5 seconds. That doesn't sound long, but trust me, it feels like an eternity. But that's if you get lucky, since it's totally possible the weapon flips you around and forces you in the complete wrong direction, which can waste so much time trying to fix, and is incredibly aggravating to deal with. Ugh. However, things go really south when it comes to the way cups are done, and you realize Nicktoons Racing is an unforgiving monster of a game. You see, in order to progress to the next race, you need to qualify for it. What does that mean? Well, basically, in order to go forward into the second race of each cup, you are required to finish 3rd or higher in the first race in order to continue racing. But it's not like you can just keep going at it either a number of times either. No. You have only 3 opportunities to do it. So, what happens if you mess it up 3 times? You're immediately kicked out and need to restart the whole freaking cup. Why? By the way, the The whole qualifying thing is only for the first race, so if you perform poorly in the other races, you still have to continue, which begs the question of why this only applies to the first race. You can retry other races from the pause menu, and believe me, you will need to restart a lot in this bloomin' thing when it comes to races, but you can only do it before you cross the line, since it won't give you the option otherwise if you just so happen to finish the race. God, why is it so inconsistent? What makes this game further tricky is the relentless rubber banding present. For those curious, rubber banding is when in a game you are besting an opponent, so the AI suddenly becomes much more smarter and powerful and starts playing perfectly. In racing games, this is very common, but in Nicktoons Racing, it's basically all around you. If you are hit by one item, just one mind you, on average, at least half the competition will overtake you at the least. Are you leading? No one cares, here comes 90 things to halt you completely. It's very common when you are racing that, as you are nearing the end, something is guaranteed to come over and spoil your fun and totally ruin your final position. At that point, you've just lost because the game is like, no, and will decide if you lose or not, seemingly on a complete spur of random chance. Meaning, if you are playing this game, 9 times out of 10, you are going to lose for absolutely no reason, even if you are some kind of Nicktoons Racing god. Did I forget to mention the game plays the most defeatist fanfare I have ever heard? If you finish in any position barring first place, even coming third is a great achievement in this game, but clearly they disagree, adding to the game's all-around brutal nature. They demand perfection, which makes this game a perfect social commentary on how we put too much pressure on young people to succeed in the big world. I know this track could be considered early in the game, but Race the Madness is a fitting name for a track that is designed based on pure maddening design. Why did I write? This is the video game equivalent of working with John Kay himself. Look at it, there's about 20 different hills that fling you out of control, no problem, and it's impossible to go anywhere in this track without totally losing yourself. And the walls, my god, the walls are everywhere. I used to like walls. Walls are nice, but these want to beat me up and call me racial slurs. If you get trapped in a wall or even hit a wall, which you 100% will at some point during a playthrough of this game, you will lose everything. Your position, the race, your keys, your lunch, just everything. On top of that, trying to recover from hitting a wall is really difficult because reversing in this game is completely broken. I mention it here because this is where the walls are at its worst, apart from the equally evil Hey Arnold track. Regardless, the problem arises in virtually every track. Sometimes it's so bad, I see the AI totally stuck behind one, and they never get out of the wall for the whole race. And this isn't even a rare thing at all, not even close, it's actually one of the more common things that happen in the bloody thing. And the best part? This is the first track of the second cup, meaning you are required to finish third or higher to qualify. I would consider even finishing this track without losing sanity to be an achievement, but finish third or higher? You'd sooner find Jesus in that time. I took so many attempts at this track to see if I could come first, but I just never could. It was one of the only tracks I couldn't do it for besides the Hey Arnold track, which is as equally a terrible track, with the one benefit being it's not going to keep you prisoner to its hellscape if you finish below third. But at the same time, good luck finishing third or higher on that one. That's not, of course, even mentioning the nonsense with weapons and the fact that sometimes the AI can just catch up to you with no real effort, like, how the hell did they even get ahead of me that time? Do I just suck at the game? Very likely. But often I had races that I totally end up dominating and wiping out the whole competition very easily and convincingly. But more often than not, these were just for single races. Everything went south in the real cup races, even though they aren't much different gameplay-wise, showing that I can totally win a race. It's just that more often than not, bad luck and the effing rubber banding of the game is holding me back. Let's talk about controls. I was using a USB Xbox controller to play the game, and it's actually pretty difficult to control. You see, you can configure controls in the settings, but they are assuming you're using an old sort of joystick controller to play the game. And, of course, controllers like the one I was using didn't exist back then, so the amount of buttons you can edit is incredibly limited, which causes problems and totally messed with my inherent thinking for some time. So, bear with me, but in this game, there is no acceleration. Did I say that right? More accurately, you know how you have to hold a button down in most kart races to propel forward or accelerate? Yeah, in this game, it's pushing forward with the joystick. This sounds unimportant at first, but it causes real problems with gameplay since you need to be pushing full force forward to move the cart, and turning as a result becomes far too loose, and turning is not ideal in the slightest. I can never stay too perfectly still in the direction I want to go towards. Even long straight stretches can be tricky to complete without incident. Since it would not let me use any of the shoulder buttons, I was forced to use the coloured buttons on the Xbox controller instead. But here's the weird thing. Accelerate is not its own button, but reversing is? Why not give accelerate a button? I forgot to mention hopping, and let me tell you, you need to hop far more than I think the developers intended, since hops are what get you around most corners, but you need to hop really often to have any semblance of control in the game over the slippery turning controls. Hops are also important for ramps, but it's never super clear which ones. I think it's the ones without speed pads, but I've been screwed over more than once by this, since I swear it changes on a whim. I'm probably deluding myself with that part, but I can't be sure. But despite this, when it comes down to it, the game is ultimately kind of shallow. While there is quite a range of characters available, there is no statistical differences between any of them. Usually, in any other kart racer, each character has something unique about them gameplay-wise to differentiate them from the other playable choices in the game. Not this game, apparently. Playstyle-wise, I cannot tell you at all what the difference between Eliza and Arnold is. They're ultimately the same character in terms of gameplay. It's not like one has better turning or anything like that. The lack of strategic diversity means that if you select one character, you more or less have selected them all. There are a few other modes. There's a multiplayer, which I never bothered with because I have no friends, since I lost them all after encouraging them to play a race with me. Relay, which, to give the game legitimate credit, is conceptually rather compelling and is actually executed rather well. You select 3 different racers to compete against a second team of 3 racers, and after you finish a lap, you swap to the next character on your selected roster. However, there is an interesting mechanic unique to this mode. As you are finishing a lap, if you simply cross the line in any old fashion, you actually start the next lap a few seconds late. On the other hand, if you hit your teammate, you blast off the line, giving the player a reason to hit their teammates in these races. However, like I said, characters have no statistics, so picking who you race with and the order is totally pointless. That, and it's weirdly kinda too easy? Having one opponent to worry about instead of 5 surprisingly nerfs the difficulty significantly, especially if you build a huge amount of daylight between yourself and them. Time trials are exactly what you think they are, complete laps around the track as fast as you can. The difference between this and some of the other modes is the absence of those boost orb things that boost you along, so now you just drive as fast as you can with little to no ways to really cut down the time apart from just taking the shortest route possible, I suppose. Again, the lack of character stats make this mode trash. I did it once and that was it. To be honest, Time Trials is a very appropriate name for this mode because it really did waste my time. All my homies hate Time Trials. So, how does the game end? Well, after you win the 3 cups, it turns out the mastermind behind this whole thing is Plankton, who wanted the Krabby Patties all for himself. Whatever. And we ride off into the sunset while the game glitches up, my credits signifying the end. There are 2 more difficulties of cups, but there really is no difference between the difficulty of either, and really it's just the same thing 2 more times. Plankton becomes a playable racer even though it's just his bland black car again, and the game doesn't even bother to credit him in the selection with his own name, and since he plays no different to the others, it's like, who cares? Forget Plankton, I guess. No one likes Plankton anymore. Or Plankton. I hope he gets, you know, some love. this game did him dirty. You get 2 bonus minigames for beating the other 2 difficulties, but honestly, both are so awful, it's like, what's the point? The incentive to keep playing wasn't worth it at all. I suppose let's end it on something more amusing. Glitches. Big surprise, the game can glitch a bit, and here are some of my favourites, or at the least the most notable, I got to experience when I was playing the game. When I was doing this one race, for example, oh my god, Arnold, where the hell did your head go? Speak to me, my love, for my life has no meaning without you in this world. In a relay race at this Angry Beavers track, I hit into my partner, and for some reason, CatDog gets completely stuck, and I'm totally unable to move, like, at all. I have no idea what's going on. I guess the game just straight up gave up on our exotic, dangerous romance. Why would you do this to me? Do you not love me anymore? By the way, the AI had gotten stuck in a wall somewhere, meaning the race was essentially forced to end in a stalemate. So, I retried again, and I swear this is not a joke, because reminder, jokes have a point, unlike my reason to keep playing. It happened again. Yes, really. In the words of Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz, if I had a nickel for every time this precise glitch had happened, I'd have 2 nickels, which is not a lot, but it's weird it happened twice. Seriously, what are the odds? On the character selection screen, I noticed I could not select Mystery Rider as a character. Bear in mind, this was after I unlocked him, fair and square, for going through the efforts to beat the cups, and the game is like, maybe he's on a formal strike. I don't know. So, that was Nicktoons Racing. It was a game. Do I recommend it to a kart racing fan? No. Do I recommend it to a Nicktoons fan? No, but in a fancier font and pretty images. It's enjoyable in small doses, like the single races can be genuinely fun at times, and while irritating, the glitches can leave you surprised and possibly even amused. Hell, I'd rather play this than something safe and too easy. Look, you could even win a big sombrero! But the cup races can just rot in the goo lagoon. There are no big sombreros, there's just hollowness and vacuity at the realization you sacrificed hard drive space for this. However, to end this whole thing, I should just mention that Nicktoons Racing did in fact have more than one sequel after the first game had come out. And even recently they did 2 more sequels. However, one was so bad it might even be worse than this one. In fact, I might have to try it sometime. How does it have so little variety when, by this point in time, they've loads of shows to choose from? Instead, they just went with, like, I think it's 4? Either way, I can't wait to get this game for my Polystation 2. But apparently it had a much better sequel, so I guess that's cool. They got a much better kart racer eventually instead of, well, to be honest, this complete meme of a game. I'm honestly done with this whole racing shenanigans for now. Peace, my dudes.